welcome back to another Koze Daily Brew. Today I really feel like I need to share with you guys my mug. This straight up says Witch's Brew, and I found it at HomeSense for those of you guys that are probably gonna ask. If you're from Canada, it's at HomeSense. I have no idea where would be the applicable place in the States or wherever you guys are, but HomeSense definitely has them. And for today's Koze Witchy Brew, I figured we could talk about my history, or just I guess like my experience with therapy. So I've noticed in a couple of my most recent videos that I've brought up the fact that I've done therapy in general. I've been seeing some comments of people asking, you know, like, how did you find your therapist? How did you find therapy? Do you enjoy it? How long have you been doing it? All of that good stuff. So I figured I could just do one quick and easy Koze Daily Brew, just solely focused on my experiences with therapy. I definitely have dipped into therapy and out of therapy a few times, so I guess I'll start at the very beginning. Back in high school, I started going to one of the counselors at my actual high school, and I did like 1 or 2 sessions with her. And that was the first time I had ever experienced, you know, going to somebody to just kind of like talk about your emotions and maybe what you were going through. And if I'm being 100% honest with you guys, like I definitely found it a little uncomfortable the first time. And I didn't really mesh with her very well either, so I only did 2 sessions and then kind of left it at that. And it wasn't until a few years later when I think it was actually when I was living with Maggie, so it would have been 2015, that I went to my doctor, and my anxiety and my depression, it was really getting bad again, and I just wanted help. And so I started doing cognitive therapy, and as much as I tried to do that, and I found a therapist that I actually really enjoyed, I did about 5 sessions with her before, again, I just found that like it wasn't bringing me what I really thought I was like looking for, wanting to grasp from it. And not only that, if you are new to therapy, it's definitely one of those things that takes an adjustment period, because it's like building up the relationship, you know, you don't just like walk in, sit down and be like, hey, like as if you've known this person your whole life. And so I really liked my second therapist, but again, it just wasn't really giving me what I was looking for. And so again, I stopped going. Like I canceled my therapy and I stopped going again. And then I was taking on a lot of like the kind of life changes on my own where I thought that I would be able to handle it, all that good stuff. So fast forward to 2018. There's a bit of a backstory as to why I decided to finally pick up therapy again last year. And it comes from a lot of it is very personal, but I also just feel like if there's anyone out there that needs to hear this and maybe needs to push themselves, then I will just tell you as much as I can, like as comfortably as I can, I guess. But last year was a weird year for me, but a great year for me. 2018 was one of the best years, but it was also one of the hardest years, I think, in terms of just like my relationship with myself. Only because I think I was really stepping into like my power in a lot of ways. And I also feel like that with that, I said this in another Koze Daily Brew, but I got lost in my sauce a little bit. And I feel like I talked about how I definitely started to feel more insecure last year. I started to overanalyze myself, critique myself. And also I just started to notice the, I guess, repercussions that came from a lot of the behaviors that I was, you know, experiencing. And a lot of it was burnout. A lot of it was feeling like exhausted, feeling like my emotions were erratic and all over the place. And like my thoughts were very negative, especially when they were in context to myself. And I went away to British Columbia, if you guys remember that, and it was I started the trip as like a solo trip with Bentley, and then I finished it with my family, which looking back now, I went camping in the mountains by myself with Bentley where there could have been bears and cougars and all this wild stuff, and we just like we just did it. We just did that. And I remember I was taking like a nap one day, and I had this experience where I was like kind of meditating, and I like floated above myself, and I was just having like all of these life epiphanies in British Columbia, and one of them was the fact that like it just seemed to me that no matter how much my external circumstances changed, no matter how successful I may have seemed online, or you know, I was finishing out Catcher and I published it, and I expected to feel so much better or just different than the way that I felt. And it was almost kind of like no matter how much I seemed to accomplish, no matter how productive I was, no matter how much I thought I was fixing like these little insecurity things and like doing these makeovers and whatever, I still felt unfulfilled in this weird facet of my being. And I couldn't explain it because it wasn't like I was all around unfulfilled. It was almost just like there was this one little light bulb that just needed to be screwed in one more little turn, but I couldn't do it myself. And so I sought out therapy. I decided to do therapy online because my routines and my schedule is so all over the place that it just was easier for me to know that I could get online and tap into my therapy, tap back out, and get right back into work. And so I did a little bit of research and I ended up finding a website. I'll leave it down below for all of you guys that are Canadians. It's a Canadian website, but there are many websites like it all across the world and in all different countries where you basically, it's like FaceTiming your therapist. And I loved that whole aspect of it because I didn't have to drive anywhere. I didn't have to commute. I didn't have to, it's a lot easier to actually show up for your therapy, especially when you're ingraining the habit, because the first few ones, like, you're gonna want to chicken out, and it's easier to talk yourself out of something when there's a lot more effort to it. And this is a lot more effortless. So fast forward, I guess, to my first session. I wrote in and I wrote out exactly what I wanted to, what I was seeking some help and some guidance with, which that's kind of like the more personal side of things. But like, there was definitely a list of things that I wanted to go over and talk through, including things from like my childhood and patterns that I've noticed in my life, behaviors that I've noticed come out of myself, and just a lot of those types of things. So once you do that, basically they suggested my therapist to me based on what I was looking for, and that's how I met my therapist. So we had our first session, and I remember the day of being so like anxious. I was so anxious. You know, when you're doing something that's good for you and you take all the necessary steps and you do all the prep and you do all the planning, and then the day comes for you to actually do the thing, and you just like, I know how I am that, like, in that sense. And I definitely all day up until the point that I had my meeting with her, I was just off. Like, I was so off. I couldn't focus on anything. I just felt off my rocker because I was so anxious about this new experience I knew I was about to dive into, and was I ready? And like, I just knew I was gonna be vulnerable, and that's not something I'm very good at a lot of the times. Actually, I'm gonna take that back. That's something I'm getting really good at, but I never used to be very good at being vulnerable. And so I was very nervous. I was very, very nervous. And if you guys are interested in therapy and you've never done it before and you're wondering what to expect, if you end up feeling nervous or trying to bail out right before, that's normal, but just go through it anyways, because basically the way that I pushed through it was, there's this concept from Matthew Hussey from forever ago, again from when I lived with Maggie, where he said this thing about like social anxiety, about how you can always go home. So like, if you get invited to something, or if there's an event or something that you need to go to, but you really don't want to, and you really have bad feelings about it before you go, the idea is go anyways. And if it's bad, then you can always go home. So instead of just bailing on the whole idea, give the idea a shot, and then if it ends up being not what you want it to be, then you can leave. And I've used that in a lot of different areas of my life outside of social anxiety as well, and this was one of them. This was one of those things where I was like, you know what, maybe I should just cancel it, maybe I should just not show up or whatever. Like, my brain was doing all types of things, and I remember being like, okay, you know what? You can always go home, even though I am home. I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna sign on, I'm gonna take the course, and if even halfway through I'm like, this isn't really working, worst case scenario, I can just shut my laptop, which would be totally rude, but it was just like putting at least some backup plans inside my head. And I knew that once I was on there, I'd be fine. It was just getting myself to show up. And I thought of all the backup plans, and I was like, if it sucks, then I never have to do it again. I'll just at least give it one chance. So I took on my first therapy class or therapy session, and I instantly connected with my therapist, which I definitely would say I'm lucky, but I also feel like I have to say, just based on the fact that I've been with other therapists before, is that you definitely want to have a good connection and build good rapport with whoever your therapist is, because this is somebody that you're opening up to, and it's somebody that you're going to want to feel like can resonate with you on some level. And I think the thing that I liked the most about my therapist is that, I don't know, there was just something very comforting about her. It's almost like a soul thing where I felt very warmed by her presence. And so I felt very naturally open to be able to be like vulnerable. And I guess to go into the experience side of things. So I have the same therapist, and I love her to death. She's taught me so much wisdom, and also just brought me so much, I would say, grace. She's brought me a lot of grace and peace into my life, because she's helped me embrace being more graceful and more peaceful with myself. And so I honestly can't recommend it enough. I'm almost realizing as I'm speaking right now how upset I am that I haven't done a video on this before, because I feel like I don't think I would be where I'm at right now mentally, physically, and just like health-wise and just all these things if it weren't for the fact that I didn't take on therapy. Like it really did change my life for the better. And it's funny because in terms of, just to give you guys a few more minutes of me talking, but like a bit more in depth of my experience since then, it probably took me, I would say, 3 or 4 months for me to really get to like the root of things with her. So even though I really enjoyed my therapist, and I still do, and I opened up to her quite easily right away, it was easy for me to open up to the more surface level things and the behaviors and those types of things. But when we really started to dig in and like dig down to the root of things and dig down to like my childhood or just like little tiny things or feelings that I had not let myself get close to for so long, that took like a few months before I really was able to open those doors pretty much. So if you are interested in therapy and you're curious, I guess that's another really valid point too, is that know that it's okay if it takes you like 6 months, a year, maybe even 2 years to really start getting down to the root of some fundamental things that are maybe blocking you in life. And I think that that's really normal, because depending on what it is that you're looking to go and get out of your therapy, hello buddy, depending on what you're going to therapy to talk about, it might be something that is really, really hard to talk about. And I just know, again, from my own personal experience, it's the things that I had locked away from a really long time ago that were the hardest to talk about, because it's been so easy to keep it locked away, and it feels almost like second nature now not to talk about it, not to feel those things, because it's like I was like 12 where I was like, okay, I'm just not gonna deal with that. I'm gonna put a cloak over that and just ignore that and move on with my life. And then so to go back however many years, like 13 years later, and to uncloak it, it takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of vulnerability, and it takes a lot of emotion, and it takes a toll on you in a way. You know, you're really diving deep, and it's a lot of hard work, but it's amazing, like beneficial hard work. And it's hard work that comes with so much growth and so much value that I just feel like, as hard as it's been, and as uncomfortable as I've had to get, I also know that the outcome on the other end of things is that I do feel healthier, and I do feel way more in tune with myself, way more understanding of myself and even of other people, and way more aware of how normal it is, a lot of the things that we think aren't normal. And how, you know, it's easy, I think, when you're dealing with mental health issues and when you're dealing with traumas, or when you're dealing with anything at all that you tend to struggle with, to believe that your problem is like specifically catered to you, and that no one will ever understand and no one's ever experienced it. And that idea, it's a very lonely thought, and it's a very lonely world to live in when you think that no one's ever going to understand, no one has ever experienced what you're experiencing, or that you feel like, I know that there's certain times where I told my therapist, I was like, I thought I was going crazy. Like, I literally have thought at times in my life that I was going crazy. And she was like, no, you're not going crazy. That's just your brain trying to do this, or that is this. Like, she's just able to reframe a lot of the things that I used to struggle with in a way that was so much easier for me to grasp, and so much easier for me to feel comfortable to sit beside and be like, oh, this whole shadow that I used to be afraid of is literally not a shadow at all. It's just an experience that I went through that helped me learn this, or helped me grow into this. Like I said, I can't even I don't even feel like I can actually put into logical words like how much just going to therapy has helped me. And I definitely think that whether you are somebody that wants to get into therapy, get into cognitive behavioral therapy, do your therapy online, do your therapy in person, just find whatever works for you. Just find a safe place to have a third-party source to unpack the feelings that you have, to unpack the struggles that you have, to bounce some of the thoughts that you might have off of somebody else who can help you reframe them, and who can help you basically accept yourself and work through a lot of the challenges that we all will face in our life, because life automatically, it just, in the contract of life, we take on challenges. There's no way around it. And there's no way to go through life completely unscathed and completely challenge-free or mistake-free. And so I feel like it is really, really important no matter if you feel like you have a big reason to go to therapy, or maybe just a few small reasons, or maybe you're just feeling compelled or intuitively feel the need to, just follow it and see how it goes. Start talking to somebody, and it honestly it'll benefit you in ways that you can't even see coming. And if anything, it'll help you become more open and more vulnerable as a person, and more accepting of yourself and of the world. And that is what I can basically sum up as my experience with therapy to date. It's funny because I was actually just out with my friend Maria last night for dinner, and we were talking about therapy and how for like the first time we were both like, it's weird because we both have like therapy like appointments coming up, but we were both like, I don't want to like get rid of my therapist, but I also don't have a list this time around. And like, it's funny because that's actually exactly how I'm kind of feeling right now, is that for the first time I literally have a therapy session next week, and every time I do therapy I kind of go back into my journals and I read what are some of the things that I write, because when I write in the morning I don't really like filter my thoughts, I just write. And so it's funny like a week or two later to go back and look and be like, oh, that's interesting, I can see that maybe I was dealing with this, or it's just easier to look back. And so every time I go into therapy I always have like a little piece of paper of some things that I really want to bring up, some patterns that I'm noticing and whatever. And this is like one of the first times in a while, pretty much ever, that I'm like, I don't have any notes. All my journal entries are happy, and like all the things going on are like, even if they're not happy, they might be bittersweet, but they're all like, it's all coming in good strides. And so yeah, that's kind of where, I guess that's the update as to where I'm at with therapy, is that I don't want to get rid of her because it's hard to build that relationship, but I also know that at this moment in time, I feel like we've worked through all the knots that I've ever really wanted to work through up until now, which is it's a very satisfying feeling. So there you guys have it. That is my experience with therapy. Let me know what your guys' thoughts and experiences are down below. If you guys do therapy, if you don't, have you tried the cognitive therapy? I just want to hear if you are interested in therapy, if you guys want me to talk more about it, get more in depth about like how I prep for my therapy sessions, like how I just kind of explained to you. All of that good stuff. I can definitely talk more about it, and I think it's important to talk about it too, and to talk about it to your friends, to talk about it to your family. Even just finding out last night that like Maria goes to therapy, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like it's becoming a lot more normal, and it's becoming a lot more socially acceptable to talk about these things, and I love that, because I actually think that there's not one person on this planet that couldn't benefit from at least one therapy session, because it's just a third-party source that's helping you reframe and take your perspective off and just look at your life a little bit more objectively and look at your challenges more objectively. Anyways, I've been rambling for a while now, so I'm gonna let you guys go. Leave all your thoughts, experiences, and all that goodness down below, and aside from that, I'll talk to all of you guys tomorrow morning. Bye guys.